breakfast, lunch, dinner. 3 fixed appointments, roughly evenly spaced every single day of your life since childhood. It feels less like a habit and more like a biological requirement. Skip one and your whole day feels off. Here's what doesn't fit. For most of human history, there was no such schedule at all. Not 3 meals, not evenly spaced, not even for long stretches of history, a moral neutrality around eating whenever you felt like it. The fixed 3-meal day is a genuinely recent invention, and the story of how it got installed into billions of people at once is stranger than you'd expect. Start with the deepest baseline. Hunter-gatherer eating patterns weren't scheduled at all. Anthropological studies of hunter-gatherer societies, the closest living approximation to how humans ate for the vast majority of our history, describe eating as opportunistic rather than scheduled. You ate when food was available and when you were hungry, which meant in a feast or famine environment, eating patterns varied enormously day to day. Sometimes a large meal after a successful hunt, sometimes grazing on gathered food throughout the day, sometimes very little for stretches at a time. There was no concept of meal times as fixed social appointments. There was simply food or the absence of it. Move forward to classical antiquity, and something closer to a single dominant meal shows up, but still nothing like your modern schedule. Ancient Roman writing on diet and daily life described a single main meal called cena, typically eaten in the afternoon, as the central eating event of the day. Breakfast, ientaculum, existed but was often light, minimal, or skipped entirely by many. Some Roman moralists actually treated eating early in the day or eating multiple substantial meals as a sign of gluttony or poor self-control. The idea that a proper day required 3 roughly equal meals simply wasn't the cultural default, and that suspicion toward breakfast specifically didn't go away in medieval Europe, it got stranger. Historical accounts of medieval European eating habits describe breakfast for much of the period as something closer to a moral gray area, associated in religious and medical writing of the time with weakness, poor self-control, or even gluttony, particularly for anyone who wasn't doing hard physical labor that justified an early meal. The primary meal of the day for much of the medieval and early modern period was typically eaten around midday, with a lighter meal, supper, in the evening. 2 meals, unevenly weighted, was closer to normal than 3 evenly spaced ones for a very long stretch of Western history. Now, the obvious skeptic question: surely this varied enormously by region, class, and era. Isn't it too simple to say humans didn't eat 3 meals? Fair and worth being precise about. Meal patterns absolutely varied by class, occupation, and culture throughout history. Laborers doing intense physical work often did eat more frequently out of caloric necessity, but the specific pattern you follow now, 3 roughly fixed, evenly timed, socially mandatory meals expected of essentially everyone regardless of labor type, is not what most of history shows. That specific standardization is the part that's genuinely recent, not the general idea that humans have always eaten more than once a day sometimes. So what actually installed the fixed 3-meal structure you now consider automatic? The clearest driver is the same one that reshaped so much else about how modern humans relate to time: industrialization. As factory work spread through the 18th and 19th centuries, employers needed a workforce whose eating, like their arrival, their labor, and their departure, happened on a predictable, synchronized schedule, rather than whenever hunger or task completion dictated. A fixed lunch break, a fixed dinner hour, and eventually a fixed breakfast before the shift began weren't primarily nutritional decisions. They were scheduling decisions designed to fit human eating into an institution's clock, the same clock that was simultaneously teaching your ancestors what being on time even meant. Once the factory schedule normalized 3 fixed meal times across an entire industrial workforce, the pattern spread outwards into schools, into domestic households, into cultural expectation, until within a couple of generations, it stopped looking like a scheduling accommodation and started looking like a biological law. Which means the mild anxiety you feel skipping breakfast, or the sense that eating dinner too late is somehow wrong, isn't ancient wisdom your body is protecting you with. It's closer to a factory bell that stopped ringing out loud a long time ago, but never actually stopped ringing inside you.